Ethan stared at the unfamiliar package on his doorstep. It was addressed to him, but when he opened it, he found something that made his heart clench. Baby supplies, diapers, formula bottles, little baby clothes in pastel pink and blue. They weren't his, but the name on the shipping label was his. His thoughts immediately turned to Lena, the woman he had loved more than anyone. Was it possible she now had a family? That she had moved on, built the life they once talked about, just without him? He told himself maybe she needed the supplies. Maybe there was a mix-up. His hands shook as he picked up his old phone and dialed her number. He hadn't called in years. Just as the call connected and he opened his mouth to speak, a giggle broke through the speaker. "Dada!" A tiny voice chirped from the other end, followed by another small voice laughing in the background. Ethan froze. "Hello, who's this?" said a second child, voice high and curious. Ethan couldn't speak. His heart was racing. Why did he feel happy? His chest felt light, giddy even, like something deep inside him had just awakened. Were those her kids? Was one of them his? "Dada, don't take it away!" one of the voices yelled, followed by a scuffle over the phone. "Wait, what?" Ethan muttered, completely overwhelmed. He didn't even notice the tear slipping down his cheek. "I really have to head home, man. My wife'll kill me if I'm late again," Marcus said with a laugh as he patted Ethan on the back. Their high school reunion had just ended, and their old crew had slowly trickled out. But Marcus, Ethan's closest friend, had stuck around. After years of not seeing each other, they had a lot to catch up on. "You're married?" Ethan asked, mouth half open in surprise. Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, shocking, right? Remember Marjorie, from the other class? The one who sent me that love letter back then?" Ethan blinked, trying to recall the chubby girl who used to peek into their classroom and giggle when she passed by. "No way," Ethan said, laughing as he smacked Marcus on the arm. "You two ended up together?" "I know, right?" "I still can't believe it sometimes," Marcus replied. "After we graduated and everyone went their separate ways, turns out we ended up going to the same college. We got to know each other better, and the rest is history." He smiled warmly. "Somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't want to let her go." Ethan nodded slowly, falling silent. He was happy for his friend, genuinely. But deep down, a familiar ache stirred. Among their old group, he seemed to be the only one left single. Funny, he had never been shy around girls. In fact, he had had his fair share of relationships back in the day. But he was young then, immature. He hadn't known what he truly wanted. Now, nearing his mid-30s, he'd been single for years. No dates, no real connection. Just work, silence, and memories. "I'm happy for you, man," he finally said with a laugh. "I hope you guys stay happy for a long, long time." They both chuckled. "What about you, Ethan?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his chair. "No wife? No girlfriend?" Ethan just scratched his head and smirked awkwardly. "Nothing." "Impossible," Marcus said, raising an eyebrow. "You were always the guy girls argued over." "Really, I have no girlfriend, no wife." Marcus frowned slightly, then hesitated before asking, "What happened to Lena?" The name hit like a punch to the chest. Ethan's heart thumped hard, and for a moment the world seemed to slow down. He looked away, unable to answer immediately. She was gone. Not in the literal sense, but gone from his life in a way that felt irreversible. He remembered that bitter season, the unraveling of everything they had. Their careers had taken off, fast and demanding. They had both gotten lost in the chaos. Misunderstandings piled up, and before they knew it, they'd gone from passionate to distant to broken. It hurt even now, years later. Ethan's memory drifted to one of the last nights he and Lena shared. "Happy anniversary, love," she had said, surprising him at his apartment with a full setup. Decorations, dinner, even a cake. She had prepared everything herself. But Ethan was drained that night. His job had been pushing him to the edge. Even so, Lena tried to lift his spirits. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, gently massaged his shoulders, whispered sweet things. She had always known how to ease his tension. He turned to face her, kissed her forehead, and then her lips. That night, everything else faded. The stress, the fatigue, the pressure. His emotions swirled. Love, exhaustion, longing, and deep desire to feel close to her again. Their kisses deepened. Their hands wandered. That night became more intimate, more intense. It was their anniversary, after all. Lena had given herself to him, completely. They ended up in bed, the world shut out around them. Ethan remembered the softness of her skin, how he kissed every inch of her like it might be the last time. And maybe, somehow deep down, they both knew it could be. Even as he held her close, he had a sinking feeling. Their paths were no longer aligned. They loved each other, but their goals, their lives, no longer matched. They had to let each other go. That night was the last sweet memory Ethan held of Lena. Exactly 1 week later, it was over. They broke up after another exhausting misunderstanding. Another fight, too much pride, too many things left unsaid. Maybe it seemed petty, but when fights repeat again and again, there comes a point when love just gets tired. That was how it ended. Ethan still remembered it all too well. Despite everything, his love for her had never really disappeared. Since their breakup, he hadn't heard anything from her. No updates, nothing. But what had happened to her in the years since? Ethan had buried himself in work. Maybe he was avoiding the pain. Maybe he didn't want to remember how much he loved her, or how much it hurt to lose her. "I haven't heard from her in so long," Ethan said softly, barely above a whisper. Marcus gave him a moment of silence before speaking. "I'm sorry for asking." "It's fine," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "It just caught me off guard. It's been years since I even heard her name." "I honestly thought you two were endgame," Marcus admitted. "You loved each other so much back then." Ethan looked into the distance, eyes dull with emotion. "You're right." "Do you still love her?" Marcus asked, quietly. Ethan was stunned. His heart skipped. He remembered her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, how adorably grumpy she got when she was annoyed, and how he'd always squeeze her cheeks to cheer her up. She was the only woman he had ever truly loved, and his heart was answering that question before he could. Yes, he still loved Lena. Marcus gave Ethan a pat on the shoulder before standing. "I'm sorry, man, but I'm sure if she wasn't the one meant for you, someone else will come along." Ethan nodded quietly and watched his friend pack up. "Take care on the road." "You too. Let's hang out again soon. I miss the old chaos," Marcus said with a laugh. Once he was alone, Ethan decided to head home too. It was already late. Thankfully, he had the day off tomorrow. He'd need it. He already felt the alcohol catching up with him, making him sway slightly as he walked toward his house. After a quick rinse and change of clothes, Ethan laid down, but he couldn't sleep. His conversation with Marcus kept echoing in his head. Lena. He whispered her name softly in the dark as he stared at the ceiling. Without thinking, he reached into his drawer and pulled out his old wallet. Inside it was an old photo, the two of them in graduation robes, smiling. He stared at her face, at the joy in her eyes. How long had it been since he last saw that smile? Eventually, he fell asleep, the photo resting on his chest. The next morning, he was jolted awake by the loud sound of his doorbell. Groaning, holding his head in pain from the hangover, he stumbled downstairs to the door. A delivery man stood outside holding a large box. "Delivery for Mr. Sampson," the man greeted. Ethan furrowed his brow. "I didn't order anything." Well, your name's on it. Don't worry, it's prepaid. If you know who it's for, maybe you can return it to them. Still confused, Ethan accepted the package and signed the slip. He stared at the box. He hadn't ordered anything. Alia, his niece, was the only one who sometimes used his name for orders, so he called her immediately. "Hey Alia, did you order something using my name again?" "Nope," she yelled over the noise of her friends in the background. "I didn't order anything, promise." "You sure?" "Yeah, maybe someone's pranking you or…" "Wait, did you prank yourself?" "Why would I prank myself?" he replied, exasperated. "Chill, uncle. We're heading out. I'll call you later." Click. Still puzzled, Ethan carried the box into the kitchen and opened it carefully with scissors. Inside were pastel-colored paper wrappings, and beneath them, baby items. Formula, pacifiers, tiny onesies. He stared, stunned. "Is this a joke?" Ethan couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "What kind of prank is this?" Still baffled, he called Marcus. "Hello?" Marcus answered groggily and clearly just waking up. "Did you prank me?" Ethan asked, still half laughing. "You're the only one I told last night I didn't have a family yet." What are you talking about?" Marcus replied, confused. "I got a package delivered today. Baby stuff. I didn't order it, but it had my name on it, all prepaid." "Whoa, that's strange." Ethan sighed. "I thought maybe it was a sign or something, like maybe it's time for me to have kids." Marcus laughed loudly. "Are you serious?" "I wish I wasn't," Ethan muttered. Who would joke about this kind of thing? As Marcus continued laughing, Ethan hung up and looked back at the box. Something about it still nagged at him. He crouched down and examined the label. There was something odd about the way his name was stuck onto it. It was slightly crooked. He gently peeled the top label off. Underneath was another name, Lena Vermont. Time froze. Ethan's eyes darted from the name to the baby items inside. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't meant for him. It was meant for her. Ethan stared at the baby items again, this time with a heaviness in his chest. If the package was meant for Lena, then… did that mean she had kids now? His heart twisted. She had every right to move on, to fall in love again, to start a family. But the thought still stung. He tried to set the box aside and forget it, but something inside him stirred, something unfamiliar yet powerful, an instinct, a pull. He couldn't explain why, but it felt like he had to see her, had to know. Unable to shake the feeling, Ethan rummaged through one of his storage boxes and dug out his old phone. Inside it were contacts and memories he hadn't touched in years. He scrolled through until he found her number. Lena Vermont. He hovered over the call button. His thumb hesitated, his chest tightening. Then, with a deep breath, he pressed call. The phone rang. It was still active. His pulse raced. She hadn't changed her number. That had to mean something, right? He doubted she'd answer. Why would she, after all these years? But then, someone picked up. Ethan froze, breath caught in his throat. "What do I even say?" he muttered under his breath. But before he could gather his thoughts, he heard it again, the high-pitched giggle of a child. "Dada!" one voice exclaimed, then another, equally bubbly, "Hello!" Ethan's throat went dry. His hands trembled. Could it be? He stayed silent, just listening, heart pounding. "Hi, Dada." "Don't grab it, I'm talking." Tears began to fall from Ethan's eyes. He wiped them quickly, overwhelmed and confused. Who were these children? And why did it feel like they were his? Ethan tried to steady his voice. "Excuse me, who are you guys?" he asked gently, softening his tone to keep from scaring them. Both children gasped in unison. "Dada!" one squealed again. Ethan blinked, stunned by what he'd heard. Did they just call him? Before he could process it, He heard the rustling of the phone being passed around. "Hello, kids," he said slowly, heart thumping. "Where's your mom?" "She went out to the ice cream truck," one answered cheerfully. Ethan was still stunned silent. He couldn't stop smiling, though tears threatened to fall again. Just from their voices he could tell. These kids were adorable. He couldn't help but wonder, did they have Lena's eyes, her gentle smile, that soft, sparkling expression? "Is someone else there with you?" he asked, concerned. "Mum went to buy ice cream," the other child repeated, their voices bright and carefree. Ethan nodded to himself. At least they weren't alone. Not really. But why did they have Lena's phone? "Can you give the phone to your mum when she gets back?" he asked. "Okay," they chorused. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed from the background. A woman, gentle but firm. "Kids, what is that? Is that my phone?" "I told you not to touch my phone," she scolded softly. Ethan's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. It was her. Lena's voice was unmistakable. He hadn't heard it in so long, and yet it was exactly as he remembered. Soft, warm, melodic. The phone shuffled again, then clearer now. "Hello? Who's this?" Ethan froze. She didn't recognize his number, but he couldn't stay silent, not after all this. "It's me, Ethan." A pause, then silence. She hung up. Ethan stood in shock, phone still in hand, the call screen fading. What had he expected? That she'd be happy to hear from him? That everything would magically fall back into place? Of course she wouldn't be thrilled. It had been years. He sighed, ready to put the phone down. But then it rang. The caller ID read, Lena Vermont. Ethan's hand tensed as he picked up the phone. "Hello," Lena said. "I'm sorry for ending the call. That was rude of me." "No, it's fine. I'm sure you were just surprised," Ethan replied, his voice low and cautious. A silence hung between them, the kind that felt heavier with every second. "Hi, Ethan. It's been so long," Lena finally said, her tone measured. "Why did you call?" She wasn't cold, but she wasn't warm either. There was a certain formality in her voice now, so different from the playful tone she once used with him. Actually, I received a package," Ethan explained. "It was delivered to my place, but I think it was meant for you." There was a pause. "What kind of package?" she asked. "Did you open it?" "I did. I'm sorry. It had baby things inside," he answered. "You have kids now. Congratulations, Lena." He tried to say it sincerely, but the tightness in his throat betrayed him. Lena didn't respond immediately. "Let's meet," she said, after a moment. "I'll text you the location. Bring the package." Before Ethan could say anything else, the line went dead. He stared at the phone, heart pounding. Was this really happening? He had spent years wondering what had become of her. Now, in less than an hour, she was inviting him to meet. He didn't sleep much that night, not because of worry, but anticipation. Something he hadn't felt in a long time was stirring in his chest. A notification pinged on his phone. From Lena Vermont, hi. "I'm sorry it took some time. Let's meet up at Wings Cafe tomorrow at 5 p.m. Ethan swore under his breath, staring at the message. Even her text was formal. Still, his heart raced. He forced himself to breathe, to stay grounded. "She has a family," he reminded himself aloud. "Get it together." He turned off his phone and the lamp, staring into the darkness. Everything was moving too fast. But after all these years, he was going to see her again. Ethan woke up the next morning unable to shake the excitement. All day he watched the clock, waiting for 5 p.m. He couldn't stop rehearsing what to say, how to act, how to seem normal after everything. In front of the mirror, he tried calming himself. "Inhale, exhale, you've got this," he whispered. "It's been years. Maybe she's moved on. Just talk. He even winked at his reflection, then rolled his eyes. What am I doing? Still, he fixed his shirt, patted his face, practiced a small smile. It had been so long since he last saw her, and he didn't want to look like a mess. Then he looked at their old photo again, still tucked in his wallet, the one from high school graduation, where they stood side by side in their gowns, both grinning. She had always looked beautiful, even on her worst days. What would she look like now? The last time they'd seen each other, she was always tired, eyes burdened by exhaustion. She hadn't been sleeping much. He remembered feeling helpless, watching her struggle, unable to fix it. With a deep breath, Ethan finally left the house and climbed into his car, the one he'd saved up for 3 years to buy. It was his first major investment, and he'd worked hard for it. As he drove, he played the songs they used to love, the kind with lyrics that used to inspire them both, the ones that helped them push through tough days together. Memories flooded his mind, making him smile, and when he finally pulled into the cafe's parking lot, nerves hit him again. He sat in the car for a few extra seconds, mentally debating whether to go in. His palms were sweaty, his heart thudded. What if he froze? What if she brought someone else? But then, he heard it, a familiar voice. Ethan, is that you? He turned, and there she was. Ethan slowly turned around. His eyes met hers. Lena. She looked almost the same, yet different. Her eyes, still soft, still deep, no longer sparkled the way they used to when she looked at him. Her gaze was calm, reserved. It's been a while, Lena said with a small smile. Ethan could only nod, returning the smile, suddenly speechless. Let's go inside, she said gently. They walked together into the cafe, side by side, and chose a table near the window. Order whatever you want, Ethan offered once they sat down. It's on me. Lena nodded and looked over the menu. When the waiter arrived, she placed her order, and Ethan quickly followed. Ethan noticed the racing of his own heart slowing a bit, still fast, but steadier now. He told her his order, and once the waiter left again, the silence settled. I don't know where to start, Ethan finally said, voice low. But I'm really happy to see you. Lena gave a polite smile, but her eyes revealed something more, something uncertain, like she was holding back. Me too, I guess I'm happy to see you too, she replied. I haven't heard from you in such a long time. Likewise, Ethan said. Then he cleared his throat. About the package. Lena shifted in her seat slightly, her calm demeanor momentarily cracking. She seemed tense, nervous. Ethan reached under the table and pulled the box up, placing it on top. Lena exhaled quietly but didn't say anything. Is something wrong? Ethan asked, concern etched into his face. She quickly shook her head. Number, thank you, Ethan. He nodded, but the awkwardness in her expression cut into him. Was this all they were now? Just polite strangers? Their eyes met for a moment. He thought, maybe he imagined it, that her cheeks turned a little pink. So, how are you? Ethan asked. Before she could answer, the waiter returned with their food and drinks. They each adjusted their plates and cups, busying themselves to break the tension. As they both reached for a spoon at the same time, their hands brushed. Lena quickly pulled hers back, her cheeks flushing again. Sorry, she mumbled. Sorry, Ethan echoed awkwardly. Silence lingered for a moment before Ethan finally answered her earlier question. I'm doing fine. Got the job I wanted, bought my own car, even got a piece of land and managed to build a house. Those were our dreams, remember? His voice trailed off at the last part. Lena looked down for a second, then gave a small nod. What else? She asked. Ethan gave a quiet laugh. That's it. Wake up, go to work, come home tired, sleep, repeat. Lena smiled faintly. I feel you. Good thing I have Nathan and Eamon. When I get home and hear their laughter, see their cute little faces, it all melts away. Ethan listened, his heart torn. He wanted to feel happy for her, and he did, in a way. But it still hurt. She sounded genuinely happy, and he wasn't sure where or if he fit into that. Something inside him stirred, something more than jealousy, curiosity, yearning. He didn't know why, but he felt a strong connection to the children, just from their voices, and now that she mentioned their names, Nathan and Eamon, the names echoed strangely in his chest. "You know what's funny?" Lena said softly. "Whenever I look at them, all I see is your face. It's like you never really left." Ethan's eyes widened. "What?" he whispered, barely breathing. Their eyes locked. "Can you repeat that?" he asked gently. Lena didn't answer. Instead, she stood quickly, gathering her things, avoiding his gaze. "Lena," Ethan started, standing with her. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said, voice shaky. "I have to go." And just like that, she turned and walked out. Ethan remained frozen, watching her leave, heart pounding in his chest. He started to follow, but something on the floor caught his eye. A photo that had slipped from her bag during her hurried exit. He bent down and picked it up. It was a picture of two little boys, twins. Their bright eyes, their soft curls, the shape of their noses, even their lashes. It was like looking at his own childhood photo duplicated. He stood there, stunned. "They're mine," he whispered. "They have to be." Everything suddenly made sense. The familiarity in their voices, the instinct he felt, the way they'd called him Dada. He turned the photo over and saw an address written on the back. Without a second thought, Ethan made up his mind. He had to see them again, had to know for sure. 2 days later, on his next day off, Ethan made the drive to the address. He hadn't slept well, his thoughts consumed with Lena and the children. If they really were his, what would he do? What should he do? All he knew was that he had to see them. The drive took over an hour because of traffic, but eventually he found himself in a quiet suburban neighborhood. He parked a short distance from a modest 2-story home with a large tree beside it. Ethan sat in the car for several minutes, collecting himself. Then the red gate creaked open. Lena stepped out, holding the hand of a little boy. Another boy, his identical twin, followed close behind. They were laughing, running toward an ice cream truck. Ethan couldn't stop the tears that formed in his eyes as he watched them. "They're mine," he said aloud, chest tight. "They're my kids. My family." Ethan's heart swelled as he watched them from the car. The way they laughed, the way Lena gently guided them. It all struck him deeper than anything had in years. But then came the sting. Why hadn't she told him? Yes, they'd broken up. Yes, they were hurting. But didn't he deserve to know? To be there? He bit his lip, trying to keep his emotions in check as they disappeared back inside, closing the red gate behind them. At least now he knew. At least he had seen them. The next day, Ethan gathered his courage and called Lena. He didn't think she'd answer, not after the awkward way they'd parted. But to his surprise, she picked up. "Hi, Ethan," she greeted, hesitant. "Lena," he said quickly, "I'm sorry. For everything, for showing up, for catching you off guard." There was a pause. "I'm sorry too," she said. "For running away, for not telling you sooner. You're probably confused, but if you still want answers, come to the house. I'll introduce you to Nathan and Eamon." Ethan's breath caught. "I'll give you the address," Lena added. "Sure, I'll be there tomorrow," he replied, unable to hide the joy in his voice. That night, he didn't sleep because of anxiety or sorrow, but because of hope. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, his heart pounding with anticipation. He packed some treats for the kids, even stopped by a drive-thru to grab McDonald's for everyone. He wanted to make a good impression, to come with something, anything. He parked beside the red gate and stood outside with his arms full, taking a deep breath before pressing the doorbell. Footsteps approached, then the door opened. Lena appeared, her familiar face glowing in the morning light. Their eyes met. "Hi," Ethan greeted nervously. Her cheeks flushed slightly. "Hi, I'm glad you made it. Traffic can be awful around this time." He stepped inside as she gestured him in, showing him around. The yard was simple but lovely, with a swing and a slide set up in one corner. "They love playing there," Lena said, noticing where his gaze had landed. Ethan smiled. "I'll explain everything to you, Ethan," she continued. "You don't need a DNA test. I know. They're yours. I'm sorry. When I found out I was pregnant, we had just broken up. I was confused, scared. I thought keeping it from you was the right decision." She paused, voice trembling slightly. "Even when they turned 5, I still didn't tell you. I was afraid you'd be angry or take them away. I didn't even know what your life was like anymore." Ethan didn't speak. He listened, trying to understand. She looked up at him. "And then, suddenly, after all these years, you showed up." Ethan's heart ached. All the time he'd missed, all the memories he could have shared. "Can I see them?" he asked softly. Just then, familiar little voices echoed from inside, shouting and giggling. He didn't need an answer. "I really want to see them," he said again, voice cracking slightly. "They've been wanting to meet you," Lena whispered. "They know what you look like. I've told them about you. I said you worked far away, but that one day you'd visit." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. She led him inside, and there they were, the twins, playing and laughing on the couch, pillows strewn everywhere. The moment they saw him, they froze. Then they bolted toward him. "Dada! Yay, you came to visit us!" Lena stood back, wiping a tear, as she watched Ethan drop to his knees and embrace his sons for the first time. Ethan hugged the twins tightly, overwhelmed. He couldn't speak. He didn't want to break the moment. "Our sons," Lena said softly from behind. He turned slightly and looked at her as she stepped closer. She gently kissed the boys on their foreheads, and they beamed up at her, then back at Ethan. "You're the guy in the picture!" Nathan exclaimed excitedly. "Mommy always shows it to us. You're Dada." Ethan laughed through the emotion building in his chest. The boys had Lena's curls, but his nose and long lashes, they were unmistakably his. He reached out and pinched Eamon's cheek gently. "Sorry, kids. Dada's been working far away, but starting now I'll be around a lot more, okay?" The twins jumped in excitement. "Okay." Ethan played with them for the rest of the afternoon, laughing and learning everything he could about them. But time felt far too short. Years had passed, and he had so much to catch up on. When the clock hit 8 p.m., Lena said it was bedtime. Ethan carried the boys up in his arms, one on each side, and followed her to their bedroom. "Will we see you tomorrow, Dada?" Eamon asked, hugging his neck tightly. Ethan looked at Lena, who briefly met his eyes before glancing away, as if unsure how to feel. "Of course," Ethan answered. "I'll be here." In the room, Lena turned on the light and placed the boys gently on their bed. "Bedtime story," Nathan called out eagerly. "Quiet down," Lena whispered as she tucked them in and kissed their foreheads. She looked at Ethan. "They love bedtime stories. I think they want you to read tonight." He smiled. "Of course. Where's the book?" Lena handed him a children's book. "This one's their favorite." "Yay! Dada's reading!" Nathan and Eamon shouted, giggling. As Lena stepped out to prepare their milk, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and began to read. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly right. Lena returned a few minutes later with 2 cups of milk, but the twins were already asleep, curled up beside Ethan. They didn't even drink, she whispered, setting the cups on the nightstand and chuckling softly. Ethan looked down at them, then at her. They're amazing. They are, she agreed, her voice gentle. They both stared at the twins for a moment, then Lena spoke again. Can we talk? Ethan nodded. She turned off the lamp, picked up the untouched milk, and motioned for him to follow her downstairs. He took one of the cups from her as they walked to the small terrace outside. The night air was cool. Lena looked up at the sky, and Ethan couldn't help but glance sideways at her calm, familiar face. He remembered this, how she used to call him late at night just to talk, just to share her thoughts while staring at the stars. He'd always listen. He would have done anything for her back then. Still would. Lena, he said. She turned to him. I'm not confused anymore. I still love you. After all these years, I never stopped. Her eyes widened. She didn't speak, but the look on her face was enough. I want to make up for everything, Ethan continued. I want to be there for the kids, and for you. May I court you again? Lena looked away, biting her lip, her face clouding. Is something wrong? He asked, concern flooding his voice. She was about to answer, but headlights suddenly swept over the driveway and a car pulled up. A man stepped out, holding a Jollibee takeout bag, dressed sharply and walking confidently toward them. David, Lena said quickly. Ethan felt something twist in his gut. David stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked Ethan up and down with suspicion. Who are you? David, Lena started, but David cut her off. I asked who he is. Ethan stood up. I could ask the same. Who are you to her? I'm her suitor, David answered, straightening his shoulders. Lena closed her eyes briefly, tension heavy in her expression. Seriously? Ethan muttered, turning to Lena. You're dating him? She hesitated, then said softly, Yes. Ethan's chest tightened. So, the answer to my question earlier is no, he said quietly. Lena nodded, eyes downcast. Yes, I've had a suitor for a while. The kids know him too. David stepped forward, his voice sharper now. You heard her. Get out of here. Ethan brushed off the hand David placed on his shoulder. Don't touch me. Ethan, stop, Lena said, stepping between them. You're siding with him? Ethan asked her, voice rising slightly. Is that why you wouldn't let me try again? Because of this arrogant, who the hell are you to come here and question anything? David cut in, visibly annoyed. Showing up this late at night? Who even are you? I'm their father, Ethan said firmly. David's eyes narrowed. And you're just now showing up? I've been here for a year, and you… What? Think you can just walk in and take over? I'm not taking over anything, but I have a right to be here, David scoffed. I've wasted enough time. I'm done with this. He tossed the takeout onto the ground, turned, and stormed off to his car. David, wait! Lena called out, but David didn't stop. He got into his car, slammed the door, and drove away. Ethan and Lena were left standing in silence. Happy now? She asked bitterly. You ruined that. He was never the one for you, Lena, Ethan said. You don't get to say that, she snapped. He was good to me, to the kids. He was there. Ethan looked at her, heart breaking. Do you love him? She paused. I don't know. Maybe. But that's not the point. Then what is? You hurt me, Ethan. You left. And now you think you can just come back and pick up where we left off? He had no answer. She was right. He'd walked away back then, even if it hadn't been intentional. I'm not asking you to forget the past, he said, but I am asking for another chance. I want to make it right. She looked at him long and hard, then sighed. You should go home. Ethan nodded slowly and turned away. Ethan left quietly that night. The following day, he called Lena through video chat. She answered, phone propped up on the kitchen table while cooking breakfast. The twins were seated nearby, laughing and showing off their toys to the camera. Lena's soft chuckle could be heard as she said, "Dada doesn't play with toys anymore." Nathan pouted, making Ethan laugh. "It's okay, I love talking to them," Ethan said. "By the way," he added, "when are you guys free?" Lena set something down on the table. The camera shook slightly. Then she picked up the phone again. Her face was slightly flushed, sweat on her forehead from the stove. "Tomorrow, why?" Ethan grinned. "I was hoping we could go to the park, just the four of us." "With you?" Lena asked, surprised. "Of course," Ethan replied. "It could be our first date again, after all these years." Lena flushed even more and lowered the phone quickly, returning it to its spot so her face wouldn't show. "Fine," she said quietly, trying to hide her reaction. Ethan chuckled to himself. "She's blushing," he thought. "She still feels something." Lena turned to the twins and asked, "Kids, do you want to go to the park with Dada tomorrow?" The boys cheered and clapped in delight. "Yay! Park with Dada!" Ethan and Lena both laughed. She ended the call a few minutes later, reminding them all to get ready for school. Ethan wished he could drive them there, but he had work. His schedule was still adjusting. The next day, after finishing his tasks, Ethan drove to pick them up. On the way, they had a video call, the kids already dressed and excited. "Come quick, Dada, we're ready," they shouted. When he arrived and parked, they ran toward his car, arms outstretched. "Dada, I missed you," Eamon exclaimed as Ethan knelt down and pulled both boys into a hug. "Can we go to McDonald's first before the park?" Nathan asked sweetly. Ethan laughed, ruffled his curly hair, and glanced at Lena, who was now standing a few feet behind them. Their eyes met. Something in her gaze softened. Ethan stood, lifting the twins with ease. "Let's go?" he asked. She smiled and nodded. They all climbed into the car, and the drive began with laughter. The twins pointed excitedly at things outside the window. They were cheerful, full of energy, like any other kids their age. As promised, Ethan stopped by McDonald's. They ate and packed some extra food to take with them to the park. The rest of the drive was peaceful, filled with the boys' chatter and Lena's quiet smiles. When they finally arrived, Lena and the boys were the first to step out. The twins immediately ran toward the playground, their joy contagious. Ethan parked and followed them, watching as Lena pushed the twins gently on the swings. Her laughter mixed with theirs, warm and effortless. He felt something settle inside him. This was what he'd been missing. He took a deep breath, making a silent promise to never miss another moment like this. Later, they all gathered around one of the wooden picnic tables beneath a tree. The twins pointed to the spot eagerly. "Let's eat here," Lena chuckled. "We just ate." "But it tastes better here." She gave Ethan a pointed look. "You're spoiling them with junk food." Ethan raised both hands. "Yes, ma'am." She laughed and shook her head as they all settled in. While she unpacked the food, Ethan played with the boys again, lifting Nathan into the air like Superman. The boys shrieked with laughter. "Careful, you'll drop him," Lena warned, though she was smiling. They all ate together, sharing stories and laughter. Lena telling silly tales about the boys, Ethan listening like every word was gold. After eating, the boys pulled out their toys and played on the grass nearby. Ethan and Lena remained at the table, side by side, watching them. "It's beautiful here," Lena said softly, eyes scanning the park. Ethan nodded. "We used to come here all the time, remember?" Lena smiled. "Back when we were still in school, it looked so different then." Ethan grinned. "Yeah, smaller, less colorful. And we used to study here," she added. "Well, you studied. I mostly panicked." They both laughed, memories surfacing like it was yesterday. Hard to believe we're here again, Ethan murmured, watching the twins chase each other in the grass. Lena looked at him quietly, her smile fading into something more thoughtful. So much has changed, she whispered. Ethan nodded again. But maybe not everything. Lena sat back, her eyes following the twins as they played. I'm happy, she said softly. I have a good life, but sometimes it still feels like something's missing. Ethan turned to her, surprised. She glanced at him, her gaze steady. Like there's something I was supposed to experience, something I left behind. Their eyes met, and for a long moment they just stared. Ethan gently reached out and laced his fingers with hers. She didn't pull away. Do you still love me? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Lena didn't answer. Instead, she stood, pulled him up with her, and pressed her lips softly against his. For 5 seconds the world stopped. When she pulled away, her voice was gentle but clear. I still love you, Ethan. I always have, even through the hurt. Ethan didn't hesitate. He kissed her again, a little longer this time. I love you too, Lena. I never stopped. Their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling. Let's try again, Ethan whispered. Let's be a family, for real this time. Will you marry me, just like we once dreamed? Lena nodded slowly, her eyes full of tears and a smile. Yes. Yes, Ethan. Let's build the future we always talked about. The twins, unaware of what had just happened, kept playing nearby. But the course of their lives had shifted, quietly, surely. By now the sun was starting to set, and the twinkling lights in the trees lit up. They both looked to the sky, quiet for a while. It's beautiful, Lena said. It always was, Ethan replied. But I think I only noticed because you always pointed it out. Lena turned to him. If I wasn't human, I think I'd want to be a star. Don't say that, Ethan said, his tone suddenly serious. You're not meant to be far away. You're my Lena. I'll love you even when we're old and wrinkly. She laughed. I want that. I want that future. I want a family. Our family. They lay back in the grass, eyes on the sky, when suddenly a shooting star streaked across. Did you see that? Lena gasped, shaking his arm. I did. I'm making a wish, she said quickly, clasping her hands together and squeezing her eyes shut. Ethan turned his head, watching her, radiant even in the dusk. When she opened her eyes, he asked, What did you wish for? She smiled. That it'll be us, all the way, that we'll have the family we dreamed of, that we'll have twins. Ethan blinked, smiling wide. Looks like it came true. Ethan smiled as memories danced through his mind. He sat up and looked at Lena, who was still watching the sky. I'll never forget this place, he said softly. It's where we made so many of our happiest memories. Lena nodded, the glow from the lights reflecting in her eyes. I was just thinking the same thing. So many moments started right here. She looked toward the kids, who were now playing tag in the grass with the new girl they'd met. You know, she continued, this used to be just an empty lot. No benches, no lights, just open space. And we still chose it, Ethan said with a grin. Because it was ours. He reached for her hand again, and she let him take it. Remember how you used to pull me over that short fence, just so we could hang out in peace? She asked. I didn't want to bother your mum, Ethan replied with a smirk. This was our escape. They walked slowly across the grass and sat at a new picnic table that had replaced the old one. The breeze was cool, and the laughter of the children carried across the field. Feels like just yesterday, Lena whispered. And now, look at them. Ethan watched the boys, their sons, playing with so much joy, their laughter echoing through the open air. Dreams really do come true, he murmured. Lena turned to him. They do, but only if you fight for them. They sat in peaceful silence for a few more minutes, the past and the present intertwined. Then, from across the park, they heard the twins yell, "Dada! Mama, come sit with us over here!" Ethan and Lena stood and walked toward them, and for the first time in years, everything finally felt complete. As they approached the wooden bench under the tree, the twins were already seated with wide smiles and messy hair from playing. "Let's eat again here," Armin suggested eagerly, pointing to the leftover food they'd brought. Lena chuckled. "We just ate, sweetheart." "But it tastes better here," Nathan added with a pout. Ethan laughed. "You two and your second dinners." Lena gave him a warning look. "No spoiling them with junk food. I don't usually allow it." "Yes, boss," Ethan teased, raising his hands playfully. They all sat around the table, and while Lena set the food, Ethan kept the twins entertained with silly jokes and airplane lifts that made them shriek with laughter. The boys laughed uncontrollably. "All right, food's ready," Lena called. "Sit and eat properly now." "Thanks, Dada," the boys said in unison as they sat, munching happily. Lena and Ethan ate with them, the air filled with the sounds of chewing, chatting, and occasional giggles as Lena told funny stories about the boys' mischief at home. After they finished eating, the twins unpacked their toys and started playing again on the nearby grass. Lena and Ethan stayed seated at the table, watching. They watched as the kids ran, the park lights now twinkling above. As the evening settled, Ethan moved closer to Lena. "I'm glad we're back here, full circle." Lena looked up at the stars. "Me too, especially now that we're not just two people trying to figure it out. Now we're a family." Ethan smiled. "Can I take care of you and our kids for the rest of my life?" Lena turned to him, eyes soft and sure. "Yes, of course you can." And after years apart, filled with mistakes, regret, and longing, they were whole again. Because in life, love sometimes leaves, but the ones meant for you always find their way back. The end. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel. This is Mr. Hope. Blessings to you all.